So, as you mentioned, Li Bai, there are many other tremendous poets in China. Why specifically Du Fu?
Yeah. There are many, many great poets in China, women too. I said to the Chinese friends recently who might have access to Dosh, if, I'd love to do a film about 𝗘𝘃𝗲𝗁, the great woman poet of the 12th century. But why Du Fu? Well, it's one of those funny stories, and I actually say quite openly in the book. I'm sure we all love literature in this room, don't we? And if you love literature, you'll have had that moment when you open a book that opens a window on a world that you never even dreamed existed. And that's what happened to me. I was at school here in Manchester, and then I went into Sheraton Hughes's bookshop in Cross Street, and there was the new Penguin classic of late Tang poems. And I opened it, and Du Fu begins it with Autumn Wastes. And you look at it, and you didn't imagine anything like that. That didn't come into your ken beforehand. And I loved Shakespeare and acted in Shakespeare and all that. And of course, it's a very different kind of poetry. Very different kind of poetry. I mean, Du Fu's somebody who you know exactly what he's feeling, and he's recording the feelings of somebody who, from the 8th century, in incredible detail. His foibles, his amour propre, his defeated ambition, his, you name it, his sympathy for humanity, his love of the natural world, his Zen Buddhist, because he was interested in Zen Buddhism, conception of the universe and humanity as a vast cycle. But he wrote about what he felt. If he goes out into the garden and the lettuces haven't sprouted and there's only weeds have taken over, he writes a poem about that. So you really know what he feels about. Shakespeare, of course, he's a dramatic poet, but although he writes sonnets, is completely inscrutable. Nobody could say what Shakespeare felt about anything, probably. Certain things maybe you could cleverly extrapolate, but whereas Du Fu, it's like that. And I found that really great. And actually kind of fascinated by him in a casual way over the years, and reading different translations of him, and even asking Chinese friends, well, read me this in Chinese, let me just, But then when we did the Story of China films, we did sequence on Du Fu, and then I thought, well, let's try and do this, and did the journey just on the very eve of COVID, literally 3 weeks before COVID started in China. And we put the film out in the first year of lockdown, with Sir Ian McKellen doing the readings, which was great. And we've been slightly iffy about cultural appropriation these days. The BBC and other channels, quite rightly, I guess, can be quite difficult about non-Chinese person reading Chinese poetry. But the funny thing was, when it went out on terrestrial in China on CCTV, the audience reaction was overwhelmingly, it was fantastic, and he looks exactly like Du Fu. So it's a long. So the book really is a kind of labour of love, and it is slightly travelogue-y. Shall I read you a tiny bit of travelogue?
Yes.
Is that all right? I'm being a bit wayward here, Pete, and leading you astray from your plan, aren't I?
No, not at all. If you could read a little bit of the travelogue, I have then a question about it.
Okay. It begins. My quixotic adventure to trace Du Fu's steps began in the rain at his family home near the old eastern capital of Luoyang. And on that first day, I had misgivings that my romantic enterprise might be misguided. I stayed in Gongyi, typical provincial city, blocks of flats, light industry, desultory ring roads full of car repair shops, truck stops, and road houses serving basic Henan food. Having dumped my bags, I consoled myself that whatever the ongoing destructions of modernity, the landscape remains, as Du Fu himself put it. For out there was the first glimpse of the setting of his old home. From my top floor room at the Huayu Business Hotel, I could see over the townscape and the Luo River to a rain-sodden reef of green hills stretching out to the Yellow River at its confluence with the Luo. The scene was overlooked by a steep hill topped by a fairy tale pagoda, which now and then teasingly appeared and then disappeared in flurries of rain and cloud, holding out the promise that somehow, like a river under the ice, running below the surface, the past might, as if by magic, still rise. And if you're making films, of course, that's the moment when the picture goes wibble wobble, and the story begins. We old media hacks use the same old gags. But anyway, that's the beginning of the travelogue, which kind of goes through, and with some very nice and touching interviews with ordinary Chinese people at the big tourist spots.